about potentiality. You said potentiality means eternally potential, and then you jump from there to shifting cultivation. I missed that connection. When you
What shifting cultivation does is preserve the potential.
okay.
Because shifting cultivation is not about crop cultivation. It is about the rest of the forest.
Okay.
So we don't, because we are so obsessed with production, because we are so obsessed with land-man ratio or carrying capacity of land, we don't even pay attention to what it is actually doing. If you look at the literature on shifting cultivation, all that it concerns about is how do the species change in the plot, in the fallow, right? And what is the carrying capacity of land? How does the carrying capacity get diminished over time? That's all that they're saying. They totally ignore that shifting cultivation is not about crop cultivation. It's only one small element, because crop cultivation gives you only limited food. You have to actually go into the forest. An average time spent by an Adivasi in the forest is at least 3/4 of the day. He comes home only to sleep. He is not shifting cultivation all the time. So shifting cultivation is about potentiality, right? About a forested mind, not a deforested mind.
Okay. Anybody else, or can we?
I'd like to thank Professor Sabyasachi for his insights into the culture of Adivasis. I have lived many years ago, in Adivasi areas, but perhaps I did not experience, I may not have lived that long and experienced all the brilliant insights that he was, or sensitive insights that he was able to. And I must say that I learned quite a bit hearing him narrate his experiences. Vijay has given me a very difficult, mundane kind of topic to talk about after this kind of presentation that you've heard. But I'm going to try and turn that topic around to suit my way of looking at this. So the topic he has given is challenges for herbal medicine, whatever that means, and policy options and so on and so forth. I'm going to interpret this to say, and in some sense to continue with the line of some line of thinking that was presented by the previous speaker, and really going to start with discussing about what are the policy options for our health system, and here my own observation is that the nature of our health system as it functions today is something that we have imported, as we have done many other systems, including agriculture or education, or for that matter science and technology, is something that we have. I'm talking now of course of health. We have imported our health system from outside, from essentially the West. And the nature of our health system is currently, as we know, and Ritupriya is sort of, formally engaged with this health system, even if she is a critique of it. The nature of our health system is a three-tiered institutionally managed system, where you have primary health care, secondary health care, tertiary health care, and all of this managed and rendered by the state, by the government largely. Of course, there are also private actors, particularly in tertiary care, partially in secondary care. There are also private players because government is unable to manage that layer of the system. But you have a three-layered institutional system, largely run by government, across the country, but also in a substantial way with private players in it. So it's an institutionalized system. I think that we will never achieve self-reliance or adequate health security for our people through this kind of a system, and in the decades that we have executed this system from independence till date, we know that right here in the start of the so-called 12th five-year plan, it was observed that the majority of our people, the goal of this health system, this three-tiered health system, was to provide universal health coverage. And it was observed at the beginning of this 12th plan that we are nowhere near achieving universal health coverage. The majority of our population, almost 70% of the population, is actually managing its health care by paying from their own pocket, out of pocket or whatever. So the health system is not delivering, despite huge amounts of investments that have been made from taxpayers' money in plan after plan after plan, and expanding this institutional network. And of course, the latest thing that has been happening since 2005 is the National Rural Health Mission. Now, my own thinking is that we need to extend now the layers of this, the tires of this three-tiered institutional system, and add recognize two more tires, not really add, recognize two more tires that are already there in the society. And those tires are, one, knowledge that is there in households across all ethnic communities of this country. And those ethnic communities, according to the Anthropological Survey of India, we have around 4,630 odd ethnic communities, of which 500 are the tribal communities. How many of them are still Adivasis and how many of them have become tribal, that is another matter. But we have 4,600 odd ethnic communities, and every single ethnic community has a household healthcare tradition, and each one of us sitting in this room are also carriers of that household health tradition. It is reflected in our ethnic diets. Every single diet is designed in a particular way. Everything that we have, whether it's in the north, south, east, west, northeast, anywhere, the diets that we have are designed with a health, purpose in mind. And we have home remedies at home. Some of them, or a large number of them, are eroding, but if you even today survey across the homes of India, I can assure you that you will find at least 100 different solutions to treatment, management of common ailments, or for prevention, or for wellness. Even today, you will find them. One classical example that I can give you, or two classical examples that I can give you at home level. One is about drinking water. In tradition, we had the cheapest, most effective method for microbial purification of drinking water. There is no need for aquaguards and RO systems and whatever, all these different point of use solutions that are being today offered to us in the market. The traditional solution for microbial purification, I'm not talking of more recent problems that have come into water, which is due to chemical pollution, partly to pesticides and fertilizers, partly due to other reasons where you have areas in which you have lead contamination or arsenic contamination or fluoride and so on and so forth. microbial purification, the cheapest solution was storing water in copper vessels. Even in Adivasi areas where I have lived, there was a time, and this is not very long ago, I've lived there, in the 70s, and I used to see that drinking water, even in an Adivasi home, was stored in a copper pot. Subsequently, for various reasons, now they have sold off their economic reasons really. They have sold off their copper vessels and substituted them perhaps for aluminium or for plastic, not realizing what change this is bringing about. Now, it is known so far as the external effect of copper on water is that within 12 hours of storing water in copper, every form of pathogenic microbes get completely eradicated. Whether it is E. coli, whether it is the thing that causes typhoid, salmonella, shigella, vibrio cholera, giardia, even rotavirus, all the pathogenic organisms get completely eradicated. So this was a household practice, across millions of homes, north, south, east, west of India. Or, these days there is great deal of talk about the use of turmeric, and there is a lot of scientific papers on the benefits of turmeric, or these papers are more focused on active ingredients from turmeric, curcumin, and there are several other compounds. And gradually they are finding that it is not really one active ingredient like curcumin, but a number of components of turmeric that are effective. And I think finally they'll come to the conclusion that turmeric in its natural form is probably the most effective way to use it. They're coming around to that. But I'm saying if you look at the use of turmeric in every house, irrespective of the economic or social status, there is not a single food that we eat where we don't add some pinch of turmeric in it. We're not doing it for taste. We're not doing it for color. It is a health practice, and it's a health practice that was introduced centuries ago, discovered perhaps by the kind of epistemologies that Professor Sabyasachi spoke about, the properties, because they certainly didn't discover it for its limited scientific properties which have now slowly coming to light, like anti-inflammatory or anti-cancer, or a whole lot of limited activities are coming into play. Just as an aside, since we were talking about epistemology and science and ways of knowing, of course science is a way of knowing. It is a particular way of knowing. It gives you, some knowledge about properties. It may not give you the kind of knowledge that an Adivasi would have gathered through other ways of knowing, but it certainly gives you some knowledge of properties. But the method of science, particularly relating to plants and the way they find out about plants, if you were to sum it up, you would find the limitation of that method. If I want to know the property of tulsi, or if I want to know the property of turmeric, which I spoke about earlier, so how does science go about finding the property of tulsi or finding out the property of turmeric? So there are chemists who break up that material into its compounds, into its chemicals, and they identify so-called active ingredients. Actually, we don't know which is active and which is not, or how many make up the activity, but we pick up compounds that do have some activity, and we call them active ingredients. They may very well be, because the material has so many compounds in it, they very well may be synergistic effects and all kinds of things. But the way we study plants in science is that we break it up into its components, chemical components, and then we take therefore bits of a plant and then we test them out on biological parts of the biological system, parts. So you don't have a way of testing a whole plant on the whole system. The method of science in pharmacology, as we call it, is testing part of plant on part of biology. So you study it on a cell line, or you study it on an organism. Is it antiviral? Is it antibacterial? Does it work on this cell or that cell? But what does it do to the entire body is, there's no method to find that out. So you really have very partial understanding about a plant, even when you use the most advanced of scientific methods. So that's just on the side that I'm saying this. So coming back to, I'm saying that we need to look at a health system that restores the Indian reality of healthcare. Our current health system is an imported health system where you have derived this three-tiered, state-managed, institutionalized system of healthcare from outside. And while that might have certain advantages or might have certain benefits, it certainly is not doing a good job or a sufficient job, as we can see from the data of the way our health system functions. That even after 6-7 decades of huge investments, majority of the population is still paying from out of its pocket. So it is not really delivering universal health care. So I'm saying at this stage, we need to restore the Indian-ness of our healthcare system, which is bring back those two tires that have been neglected, the household level of knowledge and the community level of knowledge. And the community level of knowledge would include the knowledge of different communities, different ethnic communities. You heard the story of the tribal community and the richness of their tradition and their knowledge, which is one of the ethnic traditions. And there would be others across. We have got 4,600 ethnic communities. 500 of them fall in the category of tribals, and there are a whole lot of other communities, and there is knowledge in all. So we have to restore the knowledge of the community, we have to restore the knowledge of the household, we have to recognize that these should form part of the health system. And in that context, I will take the topic that Vijay has assigned to me, because it so happens that in the Indian tradition, across our ethnic communities, plants is a large source of healthcare. There are around 6,500 species of plants across the various ecosystems that are known for their medicinal use for either humans or for livestock that humans manage, or even for agriculture itself. They are also, plants are used to heal plants, all the three things. And we have this local traditions, the ethnic traditions, which I call the Prakrit Parampara. Prakrit meaning, we have really two, I use two terms. You have the Prakrit Parampara, which is the knowledge that communities have, which they have derived directly from their relationship with nature. Just like Prakriti is nature, all Prakrit traditions are the traditions that are derived from Prakriti, from nature. That's why they are called Prakrit Paramparas in a particular language, way of using words. And then there are the Sanskrit traditions. The Sanskrit tradition, there is no such word in Indian tradition called Sanskrit, S-A-N. The only word is Sanskrit. And the word Sanskrit does not necessarily stand for language. It stands for samskar, on kriti, prakriti, samskriti. Samskriti means to modify Prakriti becomes Samskriti. Some modification on Prakriti becomes Samskriti. So the Sanskrit traditions are the traditions which are the modifications from Prakrit traditions. There can be no Samskriti without Prakriti, because all Samskriti is derived from Prakriti. From nature only, when you modify Prakriti, you get Samskriti. Without Prakriti, there is no Samskriti. So all knowledge systems are part of Samskriti. They are Sanskrit traditions. So in Indian tradition, in the healthcare scenario, you have a huge Prakrit tradition of healthcare. The tribal and Adivasi traditions is one aspect of this Prakrit tradition, and you've heard some accounts and narration of the experiences of this particular Prakrit tradition of the Adivasis. It's quite a fascinating account. I'm sure you've all enjoyed hearing it. So you can see the richness and depth of the entire Prakrit tradition. So you're not working in empty space. You know, the household traditions or the community traditions have a huge wealth of information. And just in terms of resources, I'm telling you, there are 6,500 species of plants that have been documented to be used by this tradition. And you know, there are databases which can give you actually the list of these plants, both in terms of their Latin names and in terms of their vernacular names, and really to support what he was saying. I mean, in our university, we have actually got a database on the medicinal plants known to the people of India, reference from different sources. Every entry has a reference. And corresponding to 6,500 botanical names, there are over 200,000 vernacular names corresponding to those 6,500. So you can see the richness of the local knowledge, because those vernacular names show you that, you know, communities have recognized plants and have named them in their own ways. And I'm not going into their way of naming, which is very different kind of a taxonomy from the way of naming that you have in the Linnaeus system or in the modern botanical system of nomenclature. It's a completely different aspect of nomenclature.